name is Alex Martin, and I serve as editor of Seed World magazine. And today, I'm happy to be your host of another episode of our Giant Views video series for our Seed World International. Even though we can't meet in person to celebrate the release of our international issue of Seed World, we're thrilled today to be joined virtually by Ponsi Trivisvavet, CEO of Inari. So, Ponzi, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and also a little bit about Inari?
Yes, thank you so much. Alex, really appreciate you inviting me into this dialogue just about myself. As you said, I'm a CEO of Inari. So I would describe it as global citizen who is passionate about seeds. I came from one of the big acts earlier, and now I'm running Inari. So who is Inari? Inari, we are a seed design company. So what does it mean is we create the seeds that take less land, water, and chemical fertilizer. Mm-hmm. And what we do there is essentially use the combination of two technologies. One is software, which some people call it AI, some people call it machine learning. We call it predictive design to really understand the true potential of the genetics of these little tiny seeds. Then the hardware that we use is essentially multiplex gene editing to unlock the potential of the seeds. So that's who we are.
Perfect. No, that sounds like you're putting together two hot button topics of the industry, that technology with that genetics that I think people are looking to kind of combine in the seed. So that is absolutely fantastic, Ponzi. But before we kind of dive in a little bit more to that kind of technology and seed side of it, I'd like to start with a little bit more of a fun question. And, Ponzi, I don't see many CEOs in the seed industry. So I wanted to ask, how has that impacted you? And what's kind of been your experience with that lately?
Honored to be able to set the direction of the company. And when I said about the direction, it's not only about the technologies, the business, but it's about the culture of the people in the organization. How do we want to create the kind of new thinking, the new way of working together in order to come up with something that is pretty innovative that may not exist before? It's a privilege to be a CEO. It's also a responsibility to make sure that whatever that I'm doing is creating an impact to the larger society there. So it's hard to explain, Alex, that it's heavy, but it's light at the same time, and it's fulfilling, perhaps. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely wonderful. And you mentioned something about creating the culture of Inari. So I want to ask you as well, what kind of culture are you working to create at Inari? What's kind of the dynamic while working there?
Yeah, so the culture that we have been trying to make sure that it stays there. You could call it as we are partially startup, a little bit more than startup now with 200 people. So we are only 4.5 years old, and we have the operations in 3 locations in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in West Lafayette, Indiana, and in Ghent, Belgium. So it's still the element of partially startup, and the culture that we try to create within that notion is collaboration, innovation, and at the same time being bold. The way that you could describe it, you could almost actually call it as family culture, in a way that we're transparent to one another, we're collaborative enough, but we challenge one another significantly in order to get to the next level. That's the only way that we can be innovative around that. But when you're done with challenging, then you're done. You actually come back to the normal way of working together. So it's a pretty collaborative and family culture, I would say that.
Well, Ponzi, I know you've often talked today about how farmers are in kind of a perfect storm of difficulties, ranging from weather to COVID to limited product choices, etc. So I wanted to ask you how Inari is working to alleviate that problem a little bit.
Yeah, Alex, you're right. You're right that it is challenging for farmers. And for me personally, I look at farmers as the combination of occupation and the lifestyle of the farmers as well. And me personally, I respect the occupation of farmer the most compared to any career in the whole world. It's a tough job. It's a difficult job. It's a sacrifice job. So everything that we could do, and that's for me is personal drive why I'm here in the seed business. And at Inari, it is really one of the very core parts of what we are trying to do. The part that we focus on the farmers is the economics. What we believe is unless we can actually create the sustainable part of the economics for the farmers, we won't be able to solve the issue of sustainability. Unless it is positive and sustainably positive is the keyword, not just positive, right? So that's the solution at Inari that we are trying to do, is to get the productivity up a lot more. And let's get the resource requirement, whether that would be water, that would be the chemical fertilizer reduction on the same amount of land. How do you actually do that in order to essentially create a much higher profitability on farm for the farmers? And that's essentially one of the solutions that Inari is focusing on.
We've been talking a bit about some different challenges that have been happening in the seed industry. So I wanted to ask you, Ponzi, what's a challenge in the industry that's really keeping you up at night?
Alex, that's a really important question. And I thought about it a lot, that actually what worries me a lot is actually biology. And let me explain more why I say what I said, right? Biology gives us a lot of positive things, but I'm not patient enough that I would love to actually bring in the innovation into the hands of farmers. Just previous question, right? That you asked about what worries me, what keeps me up at night, is that challenging economics, challenging piece on the COVID, challenging piece on the weather. How could we bring in the innovation to the hands of farmers so that we can create the sustainable profit much, much earlier? But biology is still biology, whereby we still need to actually wait until when we do the research development, we still need to wait for the plant to grow up. So that's the piece that that is still a blocker. We'd like to actually do it more, make it faster, which arguably we try to make it faster already compared to the traditional way of doing seed research and seed development compared to the current technologies in the market. But I would like to actually do it faster.
And then I was going to ask as well, because you were talking about speeding up breeding, and I know breeding right now can take, quite frankly, years to do. I know new varieties can take upwards of sometimes 20 years, depending on what you're working with. So how has Inari cracked that code to breeding a little bit faster, or is that something you're still working on?
Yes, we are working on it, and I think we checked a couple of boxes already. So if we go back to the beginning that I was mentioning about the software part, that's the one that is about the predictive design, that we don't only go in and take a look at the genetics, we go down to the gene level, we go down to the DNA level, and go to even sequence level, actually, in fact, the letter level. So really understand where are the areas that we need to go in, and then tune it up or tune it down to make it, the seed express it correctly, so it's more precise. That allows us to cut down the time significantly. We are expecting that we can cut down the time by 2/3 of the traditional way of doing the breeding. So that's essentially what we're focusing on. But I love to actually do it even faster, right? Because essentially the challenge of the economics just doesn't wait for us. Would love to see it even faster.
Of course. And I know that is something that we will probably be tackling way far into our seed industry future, but it will be exciting to see it when it happens and it gets that fast. And then finally, Ponzi, this is my last question, and I always want to end with a kind of fun, forward looking question. So, since we're already talking about the future, what is something you're looking forward to in the future, whether that's the seed industry's future or Anari's future?
Mm, I'm looking for a balance of pyramid. And let me explain a little bit more. So essentially a triangle
Mhm.
in the future, whereby this triangle or this pyramid can exist. And that triangle is the economics of the farmers, which is essentially the economics to the community, can coexist with ability to feed the world, which is productivity, and ability to actually coexist with the environment, which is essentially taking less resources. And we don't have to choose one or the other, but it's actually the stable pyramid that lasts really long for the whole solution of the global food system. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ponzi, for joining us. Like I said, that was all the time we had today. So I wanted to thank you for joining us for the first ever Seed World International, and for sharing a little bit about more about yourself and Anari. And for everyone watching, make sure to tune in later for another great Giant Views video. We'll have a couple of more as the week goes on, so we're excited to be able to share some more interviews with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.